Hello and welcome to the first live session of the MOOCs course on economic growth and development. Let me first of all express my appreciation, my thanks for the appreciation that has been received for this course on economic growth and development. There are a few questions that I have been receiving on various platforms regarding the intent of the course, regarding the textbooks that should be followed as part of this course. Also, just a few questions on whether there can be more follow-ups on this course. I'll try to address some of these queries as part of today's live session. Those of you who are watching this live session, please feel free to post your questions on the space provided, and we will try to answer most of your questions. Let me begin by, I have prepared a small PPT for today to answer some of the most general questions that we have received as part of this course. Let me run through the presentation for the benefit of all the viewers. Okay, so one of the questions that I have been receiving frequently is what is the level at which this course has been pitched? Now the intended audience of this course are basically students and professionals who are not introduced to a basic formal course on economics, and if they're interested, and also but also those who want to understand some of the basic underlying economic concepts and theories, which is required to participate in a discussion and debate on issues of development and growth. And therefore this course has been introduced at a very basic level, wherein you get to understand some of the basic concepts of economic growth and development. What I tried to do as part of this course is balance the materials on economic growth and development from standard textbooks. And to break the monotony, I also took some general lectures on how do we understand this dichotomy between global north and global south, because most of the discussion surrounding growth and development takes global north and global south as some of the reference points. Also to understand the experiences of the developed and developing countries and on human development. So students who are looking for a more advanced course on economic growth and development can refer a few other courses that are available on the MOOCs platform. But this course on economic growth and development is pitched at a very introductory level and mostly targeted at students who have not had any introduction to any economics courses, and therefore this course does not have any prerequisite, and it is free to be enrolled, free to be credited by anybody who is interested in general issues of development. We will hopefully be able to come up with a more advanced course to follow up from this course sometime later. I have also been receiving questions on personally as well as on the portal and on various YouTube channels, that what are the texts and references. Now, as I said, most of the materials that you have seen in the course have been taken from standard textbooks on economic growth and development. In some lectures, I have referred to a lot of articles that I have used as a part of a general lecture. But there are two important textbooks that I have highlighted on the PPT. One is by Michael Todaro and Stephen Smith, Economic Development, and the other one is by Rajshree on Development Economics. These are standard economics textbooks that are followed, and I have relied heavily on these textbooks to be able to provide you a basic introduction to economic growth and development. But over and above these basic text, I have also referred to these references. I have introduced you to the World Bank, the World Development Indicators, to the World Bank publication. The website, theglobaleconomy.com, is a very interesting website for all of you to compare the development indicators across different countries. So it is you are requested to follow that website to be able to compare these development indicators. Another very interesting textbook for those who are interested to dig deeper into the questions of debt and The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank Structural Adjustment Program is the one that, can you go back to the last slide? No, the previous slide. Previous one. The next one. Next one. So the first reference being shown on the first list of texts and references slide, Eric Tosa and Damien Millet, Debt, the IMF and the World Bank, 60 questions and 60 answers. This is a very interesting book for beginners who are trying to understand the structural adjustment program and the changes that came about in the post globalized world. So it is highly recommended that you go through this textbook. Some of the other references that I have used frequently are the Human Development Reports of the United Nations Development Program. All of their reports are available online. You can also download summary reports of the Human Development Reports. One paper that I used for my general lecture was a human development research paper on human development trends since 1970, a social convergence story. Now the good thing about these papers is that they are easily available online. You do not have to pay for anything. They are easily accessible. You can just download these papers and read them. And of course, a few other articles that I have mentioned are purely optional. It's up to you whether you want to read them or not, but it will be sufficient for you to just go through the texts that I have mentioned. I received a query on the portal regarding the Harrod-Domar model similarities and departures. There was a question which mentioned that, probably in my lecture I said that I will be looking at the similarities and departures between the Harrod-Domar model, but apparently I have not done that in the lecture. But I went through the lectures and I realized that this is a part of the lectures that I have already taken. So I'll just very quickly and briefly remind the students about where these similarities and departures appear in the lecture. So in lecture 6 of the course, we begin discussing about different growth models. And if you remember, we have discussed a lot about different kinds of growth models, and there is a reference to linear stages of growth models. So Harrod-Domar model comes within the domain of linear stages of growth models, and they can be considered as the first generation of economic development models, which was formulated in the early years after the Second World War. And these models basically focused on the idea of massive injections of capital to achieve rapid GDP growth rates. And Harrod-Domar falls into this category. They emphasized that massive investments are the most important drivers of economic growth. So they were mostly looking at the supply side of the economy. Harrod was mostly looking at the supply side of the economy, but the Domar model then came in and started looking at both the supply and demand side of the economy. And they said that so investment plays a very key role, and therefore every country needs capital to generate investments. But of course, there were challenges to these linear stages of growth models. And these challenges were thrown mostly by economists such as Chenery and Morris and Edelman, who said that development process is actually quite non-linear. So they said that they posed challenges to Harrod-Domar model, and they said that growth does not necessarily pass a linear stage as far as different countries are concerned, and they may pursue different development paths and economies, and therefore may miss the stages as is shown by the linear stages of growth model. So in sum, what they were trying to say is that growth does not pass through different stages of development, and therefore all countries need not uniformly pass through these stages of development. So Harrod and Domar model looked at the changing conditions of an economy, although they were referring to different conditions under which the economies operate. And both of these models stress on the conditions which are very essential for achieving and maintaining a steady growth rate. And according to them, capital accumulation and investment play a very crucial role in the process of growth. Investment plays a double role. It generates income through investment. It generates income, as in investment generates income through the multiplier effect, and it also gives rise to increased productive capacity of the economy by enlarging the capital stock. So investment plays a dual role here by generating multiplier effect as well as productivity effect. Uh, Now, as I was saying, Harrod was mostly focusing, they were writing more or less during the same time in the 1940s, and Harrod was focusing on the supply side of the economy, but Domar was emphasizing that there is a necessity to look at growth from both the demand and the supply side. And he was saying that the pre-Keynesians were focusing more on the supply side, whereas the Keynesians focused more on the demand side of the problem. However, to be able to come up with a dynamic equilibrium model of growth, it is important that we juxtapose the demand side and the supply side. Therefore, his focus was on both demand side and supply side. So he was explaining what goes on in the demand side, what goes on in the supply side, and what are the conditions that are essential for the economy to be able to achieve a steady state growth. So those of you who have not been able to follow this lecture on Harrod-Domar model closely, I would urge you to look at the lecture transcript number 10 for more details on the similarities and the points of departure between the models proposed by Harrod and Domar. So if you have more questions, you can put them on the screen. There are questions on exams. I request that you put these questions on the portal. The TAs will take them to the technical staff, and they will be able to answer the questions on exams that you want to appear in. We will not be able to answer those questions now. If you have any questions related to the course, please feel free to ask them now. Please feel free to post your questions on the chat box. If you have any questions related to the course, exam related questions can be put on the portal, and the teaching assistants will take it to the technical staff and they will answer those questions. Can you explain once again the different cycles of the economies? You mean the business cycles? So you're referring to Schumpeter's growth development model. I suggest you look at the transcripts of the Schumpeterian model um, to, uh, to be able to understand the business cycles. If you're referring to business cycles, then please refer to Schumpeter's growth model and the transcript of the Schumpeter's growth model, growth and development model that we have discussed as part of the class. Can you be more specific in your questions? Because since you're asking that, Preet Arora, since you're asking that, explain different cycles of the economies. So basically you're referring to business cycles. I suggest you go through the lecture because it goes into the details of it. However, if there is something very specific that is relevant to the contemporary times that you're asking, then maybe you can put that question. Which theory is the most relevant to present day scenario? Now, this is a very interesting question, but of course, one of the reasons for looking at the history of development and growth models is also to understand the relevance that these models have for the present times. We cannot say that these are which model is most relevant, because most of the models have their pros and cons. And currently at this juncture where we are standing today, there seems to be a return to the questions about whether or not we should have more of state intervention in the kind of market economies that we are living in. It seems like we are moving back. There is a takeover. We are posing questions from the point of view of heterodox economics, challenges to neoliberal economics, challenges to free market economics, and so on. There seems to be a conflict of ideas presently like never before. So it will not be. While it is interesting to look at which model applies more to today's scenario, I would say that we are in a conflicted stage where we are trying to find the right balance, because the progresses that we have made, or the fast strides that we have made with regard to market economies has become irreversible. And there are various pros and cons of it, as a result of which the challenges posed by the free market economy are so many that we are today standing at a stage where we are challenging these notions from the point of view of heterodox economics. Do you feel we can have a new theory which can be a revised version? Um, there are most of the theories that we have spoken about, for example, say the focus on human development perspectives. One of the things that is at the core of trying to understand human development as a principle is also to see that whether we want to have unwarranted growth as one of our ideals, or whether we want to look at the issues of sustainable development and overall human development, whether we want to look at the inequality issues, and whether inequality is hindering growth because it is not creating equal opportunities for all. So these are questions that need interrogation. And therefore, I do not think that I will not subscribe to the point of view that we need to revise certain models and apply just one model, because the experience of the development experience of countries has shown us that there is no single model which applies to any country. And there are certain countries that have shown a very rapid economic growth following the market economy model, and there are countries such as India, Brazil, which has seen very high levels of inequality by following the market economy model. So it is in this context that I think we need to interrogate these questions from the point of view of development models, and not try and blindly implement any one model as such. What are the pros and cons of free market economy? Maybe it is not under the course of syllabus, but I just no, this it is a part of our syllabus, the pros and cons of free market economy. Now, what is a free market economy? When we are saying free market economy, we are basically saying less intervention of the state, or the or the lesser amount of intervention of government in provisioning of goods and services. So, for example, when we talk about food as an economic commodity or an economic good, then whether we should have public provisioning of food as a commodity, or we shouldn't. If we are allowing completely free market as far as provisioning of food is concerned, for a country such as India, where there are large numbers of people, millions of people who do not have access to regular incomes to be able to purchase the required quantity of food from the market, and given the kind of inflationary rise in food prices that we have, is it possible that we can have such market provisioning of goods and services without an active intervention of the state? These are questions that we need to ask when we are trying to interrogate the question of the pros and cons of market economies. So uninterrupted market provisioning of goods and services without intervention of the state, given the state of inequality that we are in, may give rise to a lot of welfare losses as far as outcomes such as hunger and starvation and nutrition problems are concerned. So, given the fact that we are not in the levels of equality, the levels of inequality in a country are such, I think market economies give rise to such problems if there is no adequate provisioning of goods and services by the intervention of the state. Is India moving towards a monopolistic economy? In case it is, in case it is, would it be good or bad? I am not sure about monopolistic economy. What do maybe you can ask this question with the help of an example, then we can take up this question. What do you mean by monopolistic? If India is moving towards a monopolistic economy, you mean ownership of industries by certain groups, or what is it? Because it seems to be a very general question. Can capitalistic economy ensure competition and reduce poverty? Now, in theory, capitalism does promise reduction of poverty through increases in competition, but in practice, capitalism has created islands of poverty and huge islands of poverty amidst amidst competitiveness, and that is the reason why the human development practitioners and human development as a theory comes in as a challenge. And I keep referring to human development as a theory because this is the one challenging theory that we have taken up as part of this basic course on economic growth and development. But there are various other theories that have come up in challenging the capitalist model of growth, capital accumulation and growth and development. Yes, there are in theory capitalism promises reduction of poverty, but in practice we haven't seen so. Is privatization beneficial in a country like India? Is government intervention a hindrance for development in our economy? These are all very generic questions for which there are no general yes or no as an answer. Usually when we talk about intervention of government or private intervention, we can only speak in the context of provisioning of certain goods and services. And therefore we need to see what are the benefits and costs of those goods and services. For example, today everybody is talking about a COVID vaccine. Now, COVID vaccine is an economic good, but whether we want to look at COVID vaccine as a public good or as a private good. If COVID, considering the fact that the demand for COVID vaccine today is very high, and if this vaccine is provided only through the market, then obviously the demand being very high also means that the price of this commodity will also be very high. But we also know that the demand for this commodity is such that it affects the well-being of a large sections of population. So it is under these circumstances that private provisioning of a good such as a COVID vaccine is not a good idea. And therefore the government needs to step in for provisioning of a good such as a COVID vaccine. But of course, if we are looking at televisions, let us say, or mobile phones, which are purely private goods, which benefits only the person who is consuming that good, in these kinds of cases, private provisioning is a better option than public provisioning of those goods and services. So the issues of privatization or not are very dependent upon the kind of goods and services, the kind of sectors that we are looking at. And it is in that context that we can discuss who should be providing what. Like railways and telecom and even banking sector moving in the hands of private groups is a monopoly underway. Now, I will not be able to answer that question in this platform. However, these are public utilities, and of course, the privatization of public utilities, given the stage of development of a country, is something that again needs interrogation. Personally speaking, I will not be in favor of privatization of railways and telecom and even the banking sector, given the stage of development that we are in India today. where there is massive poverty, where there are massive job losses, and the structural transformation in the economy is such that although we seem to have moved away from agriculture to non-agriculture, however, it has not been a very smooth transition. The push from agriculture to non-agriculture seems to be distress driven, although there have been there have been rise in real incomes as well as among the households. However, the fact remains that we are in a period of massive job losses, and we have moved from a period of jobless growth to job loss growth. And given these circumstances, privatization of public utilities does not seem to be a very good idea. Does Indian government follow solo model of development? Now, if you're referring to the use of capital intensive technologies, is that what you're referring to? Please be very specific in your questions, then I'll be able to better answer your questions. Okay, Preet Arora, I think had a question on stagflation. So stagflation is a situation where you have a slowdown in the economy as well as very high rates of inflation. So that's what is referred to as stagflation. And recession is also a period of slowdown in the economy, but not necessarily associated with high rise of with inflationary forces. So that's the distinction between stagflation and recessionary periods. I think I missed that question. Free market or monopolistic market is better than perfect competition. If not, then why countries allow monopolies to form in the country? What is the major obstacle for India to being a developed country? Is it less growth or more population? Can Indian economy be developed in coming decades? Now, Deepak Tiwari's questions on which forms of market. So, we're basically referring to different forms of market. And again, as I said, I keep saying that it depends upon the kind of goods and services provisioning that we are talking about. We cannot generally speak about, countries allowing monopolistic markets. It has to be very sector specific. So we can probably talk about that in specific context of certain markets. Um, what is the major obstacle for India to being a developed country? Is it less growth or more population? These are vicious cycles of poverty. As you know, low growth leads to of course, more the heavy dependency. Population as it is not a hindrance really, because population also is the source of human capital, right? So in that, it's a source of labor. What becomes a hindrance is obviously if we have very low quality of labor, and if we have very low levels of skills of labor who are not being able to gainfully be employed in different sectors of the economy. So that's that is what becomes a major hindrance to growth of an economy. And obviously, human capital is dependent upon upon a host of other factors. What is the kind of education we receive? What is the kind of health facilities we receive? What is the kind of housing that we have? So all of these factors go towards determining the quality of human capital. The current situation, do negative interest rates look like a possibility in economies like India? Please be a little more specific in this question. Negative interest rates in which sector? Negative interest rates, I don't know why you're saying, you mean low interest rates, is it? Low interest rates, low lending rates for investment purposes. Definitely, yes, for bringing about revival within the economy, low interest rates. However, negative interest rates is something that I'm not able to understand. What do you mean? But definitely low interest rates for revival of the economy in certain sectors, yes. What are the basic problems that hinder the growth of Indian economy? I suggest all of you to suggest you to go through the general lectures on India's development experience that we have as part of the course for a better idea on these basic questions on what is hindering growth of Indian economy. Career options. I'm sorry, this is not a counseling course on career. However, you can put these questions on the portal. Probably the teaching assistants will be able to answer these questions if possible. Please try to stick to the course and ask questions related to the course. Aruni Tripathi, I will not be able to take that question on Joe Biden and the US. Is elasticity in the economic policies good, or government should continue on same policy for a long run? Again, please be more specific to the policy that you're asking, Rajat Rai. Please be very specific about which policy you want to have an opinion on. Ramamurthy, why big corporates are richer by contributing capital while laborers are poorer, even though they contribute as factors of production. Now, if I have to really reframe this question, you're basically asking that the labor share, the wage share in output is actually very low in countries such as India. Even though output has been growing, as the growth story of the 2000s has shown that India has seen very rapid economic growth, and particularly growth of output. But if you see, if you look at the capital share of output and the wage share of output, the wage share of output does not seem to have grown so much. As a result of which, even if we have had very high rates of growth has not really contributed to high rates of employment in the economy, and that is the major discussion today. That the proportion that growth was contributing to employment in the 1970s and the 80s is not contributing as much, and which shows up in the lower levels of development of labor in countries such as India. Also in classrooms, when students ask questions such as why are laborers still poor and why are big corporates like the industrialists richer in terms of contribution of capital, one of the questions I ask the students to start interrogating also is to see how much do we pay our labor, and what is the rate of growth of real wage rates in India? How fast have wages in India grown, the real wage rates in India grown? And that will probably give you the answer as to why the conditions of the laboring class in India, countries such as India, is very low. The pace of growth of labor wages in India, in countries such as India, is very rigid in a way, and that is a question that needs interrogation. How increasing income inequality is a big problem for inclusive development of India. If we talk about particularly the per capita growth, is it going to increase in India? Now, income inequality obviously becomes a hindrance to economic development in more ways than one, and this is something that I think we have discussed in detail as part of this course. That when the levels of inequality are high, you are basically sharing the distribution of inequality is very high also. It brings about a lot of distribution inequality, distributional inequality, and that is something that does not go well with this idea of inclusive development. And of course, when you are talking about inequality in countries such as India and many other South Asian countries and African countries, one of the questions that also needs close attention to is whether we are only looking at vertical inequality or we are also looking at horizontal inequality, because inequality in countries such as India also has its own social and gender dimensions, and therefore one needs to really interrogate this question as to see, when we're talking about income inequality, is it only income inequality irrespective of all the social group compositions that we know of, or are we talking about income inequality in particular reference to certain socioeconomic composition or groups of people? And there you would have your answer. And therefore, that is where we need to go back to the social dynamics of countries such as India, which are also very important to get rid of the economic inequality that we are talking about. Regarding export-import policy of India, I will not be able to answer this question. We have not taken this as part of this course. Please try to stick to the materials that we have taken as part of the course. I request all the exam-related questions to be put on the portal. The teaching assistants will take the questions to the technical staff, who will be better able to answer you the questions on exams-related matters. Okay, I think thank you for your attention for the live interaction session. There will be more live interaction sessions. So if you have more questions, please put them on the portal. We will try to reach out to you. And again, exam related questions will be answered with the technical staff. You may post them on the portal. Thank you. Thank you.